and some of those things are things that I do, and but I want to tell you what happened. So I was invited to a new party last night, and had some new people, and I was introduced with this, and then they all are saying, well, this is cool. I need to sit next to him. Maybe I can get some free medical advice. Maybe he'll tell me something like that. And then I say, but you know what's really important that I do is this. And when I tell them that, they all move back and then they leave me alone. And I say, yes, that doesn't count anymore, but this does.
Wow.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that, and I'm going to tell you, go back and tell you a story, and we're going to begin back in 1932. And that is when this mother took this little British girl that she called Wrigglebottom, I'm sorry it doesn't show very well up there, to a doctor, and said, there's something wrong with my child. I know that we haven't invented ADD and ADHD yet, and so we can't call her that back in the 30s, but she just won't sit still, she won't study, she won't do anything. He sat with the mother and the child for a little while, and then he said, in his treatment room, he said, Mother, come with me. And as he left the room, he turned on the radio, and he went outside, and he said to the mother, look. And what they looked back in the window and saw was this little girl dancing. She was mesmerized by the music. And he said, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. You need to take her to dance school. Her name is Jillian Lynn. This happened in 1932. You may not know her, but she went on to be a ballerina in the Royal Ballet. She met Andrew Lloyd Webber, and she choreographed these two things.
Oh, wow.
So I don't tell you this as a doctor to be impressed, but to impress upon you that what I see that we do with all of these things, whether it's the scanner, whether it's youth, whether it's whatever, is that we're just finding a problem and we're helping somebody. And that's what I want to do. So, also in the 30s, 1930 actually, Sir C.V. Raman won a Nobel Prize for this device that's back here. I hope everybody, I wish everybody just scanned at least in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. If you haven't had a scan today, we've got plenty of scanners, let's do it. We're going to talk a little bit about how this works. As many of you know, the very first one's about as big as a Volkswagen Bug. The parts are still there of one of them in the University of Utah. Then that was Dr. Gellerman, and then Forgeson down at Brigham Young shrunk it and shrunk it and shrunk it, just like our iPhones have shrunk down. And the way this works is named after Sir C.V. Raman, resonance Raman spectroscopy, and the magic in it is that you shine a blue light. If you've ever put your hand on the scanner and taken it away, you see the little blue light. It's not a laser anymore, it's an LED, so that kids you don't have to keep them out of the room. When it hits, that light hits a carotenoid. This is the backbone. All carotenoids look the same here. These parts are different. It changes about 0.02% of that light into a little green light. So we know how many blue photons we send in, we measure how many green ones come out, and all of the papers have shown that gives you your, in Raman intensity counts, RIC gives you your numbers. So let me give you some examples. So way back in 2014, I decided in June that I would measure the first 10 people, and I would have them come back, absolutely have them come back in 2 months, and we would look at them again to see what happened. And what you can see here, the red is their first scan, so this one is about 32. You can see 2 months after taking LifePak at this time, her number is way up here. You can see all of them this way. And when you present that, of course, you do have to be transparent, and you say, well, sorry, what about this one over here? That means their product didn't work. So this lady I'd known for years, and she came in, and she listened to me, she scanned, she got signed up for the LifePak for 2 months, and she came back to scan, and her number was down. And I looked at her, and I looked her in the eye, just like looking at Mr. Mayor here, and I said, did you really take those products? she said, no, I wanted to see if this was a scam. And I said, okay, do you want to take them now? And she did, and her number went up to there. So it does work. So at that time, what you could do, you could either take the Life Pack, or you could eat all of this. Studies have shown that all of the goodness and all of this stack of stuff is in the Life Pack. And most of us think that what you need to do is get up to about 35,000 Raman intensity counts when you can go on to the next step. And the next step is to reset the genes. So if somebody, let me say that again, because I get asked that a lot. If somebody comes in and they scan it at 10,000, then I think they need, and I have discussed this with Mark Bartlett and some others, they need a foundational vitamin, mineral, that kind of supplement to build their numbers up. So they need something from the Life Pack, plus the youth, or even that for a couple of months to scan even higher and then go to the youth. So that's what we're talking about here. And we're gonna play like this genetic code right here. We're gonna cut a little piece off here. And what happens is I'm gonna show you as the ribosome runs along here, it spits out proteins. And that's what gene expression is. This code doesn't change. What changes is the expression of those genes. And we can measure that not only in people, but this young man right here who looks younger every time I see him. I met with Joe in January, and we got to the end of the meeting, and he said, well, is there anything else I can do? And I said, yes, there really is. I really, really, really want a gene chip. And he said, oh, okay. And so he picked up the phone, he called Steve Wood and said, Steve, bring me some gene chips. And so here we are.
Wow.
25,000 pieces of data are on this little thing. So you don't just hold it up to the light, you actually have to look at it under a microscope. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about all of these scientists, all the different university collaborators, the 35 years of progress, and we're talking about gene expression. So we're talking about not what the genetic code is, but the way the genetic code is expressed, and it's expressed through proteins that do active things in the body. And what happens is that our body actually does have some aging defense mechanisms which help protect that genetic code to be expressed the very best. But as we age, we are subject to external aging aggressors. You may not think of the sun, but it is, but we all know smoke is. In fact, when we got here this morning, I had to move the smoking container out of the way because I said none of us do that. And all of those other things, but there also are internal parts to this as well. And that is that there's damage accumulation. Every time we expend energy, we are creating some free radicals and some of that damage. And that leads to all of these proteins and the actual effect of the genes not being quite as good as it used to be when we were youthful. But when we look at this and we look at all of the different genes, we find that there is a way to make the genes express more youthfully. And when they were first picking what to try, they tried 2,500 compounds at first that all showed unique benefits. They were all used in humans, and they showed unique benefits. And then when they're put together, and this is the way the gene works, and ultimately you're looking at the difference between green and red. Some genes turn red, which means they're not expressed as well. Some genes turn green, which means they're expressed more. And then it's a simple matter of comparing what the young looks like to what the new one looks like with the youth. And they did that, and this, the gene chip would go right here in the middle. And when you look at all these, then you just get a few, about 16 that are in the youth, that most robustly reset these genes to express themselves youthfully. So a question that I also, would you like to play with it? I'll just pass it around. Jeff, give it back to me. Is it one gene? And no, it's not. It's not one gene, it's a system of genes. So here, and I apologize for the slide, when we're talking about heart health, we're talking about 1,350 genes. So it's a system of genes that have to do with DNA repair and things that we'll show in a minute. And it is the most robust of all when you put all those 16 together. So far, right now, With the gene chip data, the number of data points that we have is somewhere between 500 million and 1 billion. And they're working on it all the time. When I went to medical school, which was just a couple of years ago, we dreamed about doing this. About 10 years ago, we could do one gene in about 4 hours. Now, we can do 25,000 in about 2 hours. That gene chip costs $500, and it costs about $500 to run it.
Wow.
So think about that money. So let's take the brain, because I think the brain's important to most of us, and I'm just going to show you some studies. There's studies in the skin, there's studies in lots of other things. But let's go through and add age-lock ingredients to the brain. And these are the things that we can expect. Now, antioxidant protection. It's important to have antioxidant protection in the brain because the brain actually does have metals in it, like copper and iron, and they rust. That's a good way to think of not having enough antioxidants is rusting. So the antioxidant, if you increase it, it means it doesn't rust, so it works better. Inflammatory balance, we are learning more and more about inflammatory balance and how important that is in the brain. Metabolism regulation, most of the glucose in your body goes to your brain. That's what it's used for. Cellular stress response, tissue regeneration. I had somebody ask me, she had to come back and see me 2 days in a row. She got to. Anyway, on the first day, I had been standing too close to the mirror when I was shaving, and I had a little nick. Or maybe I was standing too close to my razor, I don't know, whatever. And then the next day, she came back, and I saw her, and she was looking at me. And I said, "What are you looking at?" And she said, "Well, I could have sworn you had a little nick on your face from a razor yesterday." And I said, "Yeah, I did. But I don't even have any here, I'm sorry." I said, "But I take these 2 pills twice a day," and I showed her a bottle of youth. That's what tissue regeneration is. DNA protection and repair, that's the sunburn studies that you see, that I'm not gonna go over today. But when you put all of this together, you're talking about better brain health. And as an example of that, and the last time I was in Provo, Tanner told me that this was in press, this study. So I know it's not out yet, and I don't know if he wouldn't tell me which journal. It's one of those things you can't talk about. But it is an example of people who let their brains be used. They actually kept them. This is just a representation of it. And they had people lie down in what's called a functional MRI, which you all may have heard of, that clang, 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 noisy thing. Hope you've never had one, but if you do, this one actually measures is what's going on inside the brain. So what they did is they had people, before they began taking youth, lie down in an MRI and gave them a problem. Said, count backwards from 100 by 7. So everybody, oh yeah, that's easy, 93, 87, 86, 79. And just lie there still and do that. And they measured the function of the brain. And you can see little parts of the brain worked. Then they gave them youth. And 2 months later, they had them come back and look, far more of the brain is lighting up. That amounts to about 40% more. So what that means is with the youth, more of the brain is working, so there's less inflammation in the brain. The DNA is working better. I mean, who doesn't want that? I think everybody should take youth.
Yeah. Who doesn't want that?
And surely you have all known somebody who needs something like this. On Tuesday, I saw someone that said, "Oh, you know, I have these bad knee joints, and I saw this doctor, and he said, well, it might be time to replace your knee, but you're young, and I think the knee replacement's only gonna last 10 or 15 years, so I'll just tough it out for a while." And I said, well, that's not really very good bedside manner. And I said, you know, there's some things that maybe we could do to help that. Are you interested? And she said, yeah, tell me more. And I signed her up for a youth ADR, and as she was leaving, she said, now, when's this order good in? And I said, we'll get it in about 5 days. She said, well, do you have enough to last me till then? I want to start it today. So in all of these things are things that come up all the time. This is a particularly important one for me, since most of the patients that I see are women, and they have issues with bone density. And the vitamin K2, in just the right amount, which is what is in the youth, is what is used in Europe instead of Atelvia and Fosamax and all those drugs like that we use in the US. 85% of all prescriptions in the world are written in the US. We don't have 85% of the sick people. They use other things. So this is those are just two examples of what this is perfect for. So I'm gonna leave you with this and a quote from Bill Gates. And I thank you, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Yes, Owen, thank you so much. Time for a quick question. Again, we're a small group, and if not, we'll have time for visiting at lunch too. We'll have the benefit of having you here. That brain clot alone, walk around with that in your